Hello everyone and welcome back to ASP.NET Core 1.0. My name is Steve Bishop, and in this video we're going to talk about reading data with Entity Framework. So as many of you may know, there is an acronym out there called CRUD, or Create, Read, Update, and Delete. These are the four primary interactions that you have with your data. You need to be able to create records in your databases. You need to be able to read the various records from your databases. You need to be able to update the information in already pre-existing records. And then, of course, you need to be able to delete several records or even data from those records. So the CRUD interaction is a very important acronym for us to remember when we're trying to plan out how our various classes are going to interact with the data in our databases. Now, Entity Framework employs LINQ, or Language Integrated Query. If you've never used LINQ before, I recommend that you do a quick little study on what it is and what it's for. But I am going to be covering most of the basics so that you can at least get a jump start on using Entity Framework in your own applications and employ some of the language integrated query. Now, oftentimes you'll hear of this more specifically referred to as link to entities when we're dealing with Entity Framework. There's also something out there called link to SQL, and please do not get the two things mixed up. Link to entities is not link to SQL. As a matter of fact, link to SQL is no longer even really, it's still supported by Microsoft, but there's no future work planned because Link to SQL, the two teams that were working on the two different projects were actually combined to the Entity Framework team. So when it comes to link to entities, there are two different syntaxes that you'll encounter. And by far the most widely used would be the method syntax. Now, the method syntax simply employs extension methods that exist on the DB set collections that we put in our context. Those DB set collections have a bunch of extension methods on them that we can pass lambda expressions into in order to filter out our data to just those class objects that we need. Now, if you've never heard the term lambda expression, don't worry. We're going to go over some of the lambda expressions that you'll need to use the linked entities in Entity Framework. I'm not going to go over a real extensive, in-depth look at lambda expressions and how they work with delegates or the func of t or anything like that. I'm just going to show you how lambda expressions are used in conjunction with the method syntax. This should be enough for you to at least be able to build your ASP.NET applications, even if you don't understand the full inner workings of lambda expressions. Now, the first extension method that we're going to go over is first or default. And the first or default method is a way of going out and grabbing just a single record from one of those DB set collections. So we're going to basically look at a table and grab a single record from that table. That's what the first or default method does. Now, if you're looking to get more than just a single record and you want to grab multiple records from that DB set, but you don't want to grab everything, you just want to grab a few of them, that's where you would employ the where method. And if you've ever worked with SQL or the SQL language when you're trying to query tables and such, the where method should be pretty easy concept for you to understand. You basically are able to select very specific, based upon a criteria, very specific records from that table and return the collection of those items. Then finally, we're going to talk about the toList method. And the toList method is a way of converting the DB set that's been filtered into a list. And that list can then be implicitly converted. And there's also something called there's also an as enumerable method that a lot of people like to use as well, because it allows you to continue to enumerate. But I like to use the toList and do an implicit conversion to an I collection, and that's how I like to work with my data sets. So we'll be seeing an example of these three methods, the first or default, the where, and the toList method coming up. Now, the other syntax you're going to encounter is the query syntax. And the query syntax uses more SQL-like syntax. It uses the words select, where, from, in, order by. And those can make for a lot more convenient environment if you're used to using the SQL language for querying data in your databases. But it is quite a bit different actually in the way that it works, and even some of the language is a little goofy to get used to if you're used to SQL queries. Now, the query syntax is not going to be covered in this series, and I know some of you are probably going to be very disappointed because I'm not going to do that. It's just that I find that the method syntax does everything that I need to, and it flows much better with the rest of my C# code, that there really has been very, very few instances where I've ever even needed to employ the query syntax. And not only that, the query syntax is one of those things that is almost somewhat frowned upon in a lot of C# developer circles because it looks really funky. It doesn't flow with the way that the rest of your code is written, and not everybody quite understands how it works. And everybody's just a little bit more comfortable working with methods that they know they can pass lambda expressions to. So let's go ahead and hop into Visual Studio here, and let's start working in some code. So first I'm going to create a new controller. So I'm going to go to the controllers folder. I'm going to add a new item of type MVC controller class, and I'm going to call this customers controller. And in order to access the entities within our context, I need to instantiate a new instance of the context. So to do that, inside of my customers controller, I'm just going to go ahead and create a private variable of type adventure works context. And I'm going to just call this DB, short for database, equals new AdventureWorks context. Now I know this is not the best practice to just instantiate an instance right here within the class. Not only is it better to use a using, but actually with .NET Core, there's something called dependency injection, which offers a very nice solution to how to get these contexts into your various controllers. But I'm not going to talk about that just yet. We're going to go into dependency injection later on in this series. So if you were screaming at your monitor right now about how bad and terrible I am at programming because I don't understand solid principles or anything like that, don't worry. This is just a demonstration. I just want to get people the idea of how to work with a context. So for right now, I'm just going to go ahead and bring in the using statement for this AdventureWorks context. And now I have a DB object that is an instance of that AdventureWorks context. And remember, on our context, we have these various DB sets. And if I scroll down here to them, we have, I swear it's down here at the end. There we go. There's all of our DB sets. So we have DB set of dim account, DB set dim customer, dim date, etc., etc. So we have these collections of items on our AdventureWorks context that we can actually utilize because they're just basically properties on that context. Now, what I'm going to be looking for is inside of our dim customer table, we have this first customer here called John Yang, and his key is 11,000. So he has a primary, or this table has a primary key, and just so you can see that, the customer key is the primary key for this table. So I can look for the person with the customer key 1100 and get specifically John Yang. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and the way that I'm going to do that is I need to create some sort of variable that Mr. John Yang's record is going to be stored to. I'm just going to, for right now, do that as a var. So we're going to do var customer equals, and we're going to access the context by doing just simply DB. We're going to call DB, which is the AdventureWorks context that we instantiated, and dot, and now you'll see on here that we have as properties on the context all of those different tables or all those different DB sets. And there's dim customer. So I'm going to do dot dim customer, and then on this dim customer DB set collection here, I just need to press period again, first or default. And in the first or default, we're going to pass in as a parameter. Well, we don't have to pass in a parameter at all. You can see as part of the overloads of this extension, we can just leave it blank and not pass anything in. and that will simply grab the first customer. So let's go ahead and do that for right now. We'll just do first or default. Now, if we hover our mouse back over what first or default does, you'll see that it simply returns an instance of, if I can keep it up there long enough, dim customer. So it's just going to return a single type dim customer. And so our customer object is going to be of a single type dim customer. So we can go ahead and pass customer into our view, and now let's go ahead and create that view. And I'm just going to go ahead and fast forward here in the video to the point where my view is created for you, so you don't have to watch me do all this. So here we have the HTML markup for our razor view. I've got the model defined here as just a single dim customer. It's not a collection of items, it's just a single customer that we're expecting to be passed into this view. And we're taking the first name and the last name when we're making that the title of the page. Then inside the body, we're just listing the first name, last name, phone number, and email. And if I go ahead and just hit IIS Express, now I'm going to hop over to the customers, and the index view is the default action. So there we go, first name John, last name Yang, there's the phone number and the email. Now let's say I didn't want Mr. John Yang. Instead, I wanted, say, Rob Verhoff down here. So we're going to change it. Somehow we need to specify that the customer key value that we're looking for is 11,008. So what we're going to do is we pass in a lambda expression to this first or default method. And if I just kind of back out the language here, I'm just going to delete some of that and hit the first parenthesis, we'll see that the overloads allow for us to pass in a link expression, and that's of a type func. So don't get too confused about all that. I'm sure some of you may know what a link expression is, what the expression of func. Some of you don't know what that is. Don't worry. Like I said, it's going to be pretty simple for you to understand. And there's this more simplified version of it there. So what we're going to do is we're going to pass in. We're going to use a lambda expression. I'm just going to use C. And what this does is that it creates an item. It kind of iterates over each one of the items in the dim customer collection. And for each one of those instances, you can think of it kind of like a for each loop. For each, it's going to create an instance of C. And that C is going to be that record that it's currently looking at inside the dim customer. So it starts from the very top, the first record in the dim customer collection, and it gives us that record is C. Now, then we're going to say goes into, and the goes into expression just simply looks like it's just a simply equal sign followed by the greater than sign. So it's this C goes into, and then we use C to look at the individual object, the individual objects one at a time. So C, and on the C object that's been created for each instance, just like I said, it's kind of like a for each loop, we're going to look for a property. The property is the customer key, and we want where that customer key equals, and if we go back to our SQL query, we can see that the customer key value we want is 11,008. So we're going to say is equal to 11,008. Now from there, we just terminate our statement, and now what will happen is that this first or default method will iterate through the entire collection of dim customer and find the first or return back a default instance of type dim customer. If it finds an instance where the customer key property on that dim customer record matches 11,008, then it will return that and put it and set it as the value for our variable called customer. So I hope that makes sense to you guys. I hope that I've explained that well enough that you can understand what's going on here with this lambda expression. It's actually fairly simple once you think about it in terms of like a for each loop, where again, C is the name of the object of each individual object as the dim customer is being enumerated through. And each time that it pulls up the next dim customer, you're looking for the property customer key, and you're looking at that property to see if it equals 11,008. If it does equal that, then it will return that value from dim customer collection and put it inside of our customer variable. And then it returns that value, we're passing customer into our view, and then of course our view is using that information here to display a page. So let's go ahead and save all that, and let's once again run our application. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and go up here to customers and hit enter. And now we can see that the information we get is Rob Verhoff with phone number and email address. Now, you may already be thinking, well, okay, can't I integrate this with some of the other things that I've learned? One of the things that I kind of wanted to show you here is how great this works with the URL encoding of a get. Remember how we used a get to insert data into a parameter of a method here on an action method. And so what I can do is just simply do customer key, or I should do this as an int first, int customer key, and pass that along. And we'll just say the default, well, let's not give it a default. We'll just leave it customer key like that. And now what I can do is, instead of looking for 11008, I can pass in or compare customer key, the customer key parameter that gets passed into this action method, against the various values in my dim customer. So now I can save this. Let's run it again. And this time I'm going to do customers, and I'm going to do a query string, and I'm going to say customer key equals, we'll do 1100, let's see, do 1100 or 11010, there we go. So that's going to be a completely different person than the first two that we looked up. That's going to be Jacqueline Suarez. Okay, so let's see, Jacqueline Suarez. So we can pass in to the parameters in our URL, or if we wanted to use a post function to pass that information along, we can pass it into the parameters of our action here, our index action, and then we can use that value in our parameter as something to compare against for our first or default extension method on our dim customer DB set collection that goes back to our AdventureWorks context. So I think you can see how this all very nicely fits together. So the next extension method I want to show you is the where extension method. So I'm just going to create a new action here. I'm going to call this public iActionResult customer list. And I'm not going to pass any parameters to it, but it is going to need a var customers. So this is going to be a variable that is going to contain a list of customers, not just a single customer. And this customers list is going to be filtered by doing db dim customer. And now I'm going to use the where method. And just like what we had with the first or default method, where we passed in this lambda expression, I'm going to pass in another lambda expression that specifies what I'm going to be filtering the records by. So I'm going to say something like this, where C goes into C, and I'm looking to compare the customer key again, where the customer key is greater than, let's say, what can we do here? Let's do greater than, oh, I don't know, let's do 1200, shall we? So we'll do 1200, or 12,000, excuse me. There we go. Now that should give us a pretty good solid list. We'll go ahead and return the view, and I'm going to pass in customers. Now if we look at the where method, we can see that it returns back a type of iQueryable dim customer. So this customer's variable here is going to be a type of iQueryable dim customer. So in order to use this in my view, my customer list view, I need to set the model to that iQueryable dim customer. So once again, I'm going to go ahead and skip the video forward here till I have my view done, and I'll show you the view. Okay, so here I have in my view a model that's been declared of type iQueryable with a generic type dim customer that comes from my my entities here. So in my view that I've got here, I'm using a for each loop is my Razor syntax, and my for each loop is going to create an instance of item for each item that it finds in the model that gets passed in. And then each item inside of that is going to display the first name, last name, phone number, and email address. So let's go ahead and save this. And let's go ahead and run our application again. And now let's do customers / customer list. Now this will take quite a bit of time to run because there are several records here, as you can see, that are greater than 1200, but we have quite the list of all of our records. And what I'm going to do, actually, just because I just thought of this, is I should probably give you a value of just how many records there are. So right up here at the very top, I'm going to do an H2, and this is going to be the total record count. So we'll do model, oops, we need to do @model count. And it looks like it doesn't like that, model count. Let's do a toList here. That's probably what I need to do, count. There we go. Okay, so you can already see I'm employing this toList method, which we'll see here next in the next example. But for right now, I'm just doing that so that I can get a count of how many records are inside and being passed to this view. So let's go ahead and run this again. And we'll do customers, customer list, and we'll see that we get 17,483 records that show up here. And the reason I wanted to do that is because I wanted to show you exactly how many records there are in our database that are over that 12,000 mark. So, where the customer key is greater than 12,000. So just keep that number in mind, 17,483. Because now I'm going to go back here and I'm going to change this so that the customer list method here doesn't do a where, but rather it's just simply going to do a .toList. And there's no lambda expressions that I'm going to pass in. Instead, what's going to happen is it's just simply going to convert this dim customer collection to a list. And to make things even more clear, I'm going to set this customers variable of a type iCollection, and that iCollection is going to be passed in a type of dim customer. So I'm being very explicit about the type that I'm getting back from my dim customer collection, my DB set of dim customer. And I'm doing that because I prefer working with iCollection over iQueryable. It's just kind of a preference. So I do this toList because toList is going to do the implicit conversion of a list to a collection of dim customer for me. And now I'm going to go back into my view, my customer list view, and I'm going to change this from iQueryable to iCollection. And that's all I really need to do there. And I can even drop off this toList because type iCollection has the property of count, and I'll just show you that here. An iCollection has count as a property. And that's just one of the reasons why I like working with iCollection. It just seems to have all the different features that I want on it. So we'll go ahead and save that. And let's go ahead and run the application one more time. Let's go to customers, customer list, and now we should see an extra 1,000 more records there. Sure enough, 18,000 as opposed to the 17,000. We can even see that the first record that we see there is Johnny Yang, which is the first record that we see in our query here. So that is what you would be doing with the toList. The toList is allowing you to convert that DB set to a list, a type of list. And you can even see if I hover the mouse over the toList method here, that it converts it to a type of list of dim customer. And then that, of course, is implicitly converted to this I collection of dim customer. And that may confuse some of you. I'm sure some of you may be lost about why I even need to do this toList, but trust me, the toList method is probably one of the most used extension methods you will ever use because it really helps you out with the conversion from the DB set or from the iQueryable that comes from a where, and allows you to convert that to a list that then goes to the collection. And I can even use that right here on my where clause. So I'll just do this one last thing here. I'll do a where again. And in my where clause, I'll do C goes into C dot customer key is greater than 12,000. And you can see I can convert that where method. Since toList is an extension method, it's actually an extension also of the where method. So I can use them in conjunction like this. This is what is so beautiful about the method syntax, is that you can use what's called a fluent API to go ahead and drill down and get the information that you're looking for from that DB set of dim customer. We're filtering it using the where method, and then the results that we get back from the where method, we're filtering toList. And I can even go so far as to add another filter here. So I'm going to do an and C customer key is less than 13,000. We'll do that. Why not? Okay. So now I'm doing a dual duty here. I'm converting it to a list, and that list is able to then be implicitly converted to an I collection, which then works with our customer list. So I know I'm kind of doing some gyrations here. I just kind of want to show you the versatility that we have by using these extension methods. So we'll do customers, customer list, and we should only get 1,000 records, actually 999 records. So these are those records that are greater than 12,000 but less than 13,000. So you can see this is very efficient and effective way of filtering out your data and then displaying it as one giant list as a view here right in your website. So I'm sure there's going to be more questions, and don't worry, we will be covering other topics when it comes to using Entity Framework and querying data. You'll see plenty more examples of doing this because we will be using it extensively in this series. But if you do have any questions, please feel free to drop me a line in the comment section below this video. And if I can give you an answer, I will. And I hope to see you guys in the next video. So thank you so much for watching.